My name is Linda Hayes. I am 67 years old, a single mother, and I live quietly on the east side of Tucson, Arizona. For most of my life, I worked as a school librarian, stacking paperbacks and stamping due dates, coming home before dusk to a kitchen scented with chamomile and lemon oil. I thought the hardest part of my journey was finished the day my son, Michael, walked across his college graduation stage. I had raised him alone, after all, with no partner to share the long nights or the bills. I believed I had survived the worst. I was wrong. The real test began the week after his wedding. That morning, I opened my front door and found my new daughter-in-law, Samantha, standing there with a man I had never seen before. He carried a leather briefcase. She carried a smile that did not quite reach her eyes. Before I could ask a question, he stepped into my kitchen as if it belonged to him and placed a thick folder on the table. Across the top of the first page, in sharp black letters, were the words, "Power of Attorney." Samantha leaned forward as though this were nothing more than a casual favor. "We just want you to be safe, Mom," she said. "We want to protect you." I sat down slowly. I did not touch the folder. I let the steam curl from the kettle and rise into the air. My silence made them shift in their chairs. But they did not know silence has always been my strongest weapon. Inside my mind, one truth thundered louder than anything I could have spoken. 46 million. That is what my late uncle's mining rights and land had grown into. Secured by careful paperwork, my mother, Evelyn, had finished in secret. Before she died, she pressed a brass key into my hand and whispered, "This is armor, not a prize. Wait until the right question is asked by the right person." Now, watching Samantha's polished nails tapping on the folder, I understood exactly why my mother had prepared me. Samantha thought she was guiding me gently into a cage locked with tidy signatures. She had not counted on a woman who knew that sometimes the only way to win is by waiting. This is where my story begins. The day I learned again that silence can save a life. I did not open the folder that morning. Instead, I let the lawyer and Samantha gather their things when I said I would have my attorney review the papers. They left with polite smiles that trembled at the edges. When the door clicked shut, I stood alone in the kitchen with the kettle still warm, the air heavy with unsaid words. My hand drifted to the brass key on the shelf, the one my mother had pressed into my palm years before. Its weight reminded me of a truth I had hidden for decades. My mother's name was Evelyn Hayes. She raised me on desert soil, taught me to read clouds before storms, and believed a woman's real inheritance was patience sharpened by wisdom. The year she passed, she left behind more than photographs and quilted blankets. In the cedar chest that had always sat at the foot of her bed, I found a blue folder marked with my name. Inside were deeds, contracts, and trust documents I could barely understand at first glance. They revealed that my late uncle, a quiet man who once owned rights to a stretch of land outside Bisbee, had left everything to me. Those rights had been sold, leased, and invested over time, until the value reached numbers. I could hardly whisper without trembling. There was also a letter written in her careful script. "My dearest Linda," it began, "if you are reading this, I am gone, and you must carry what I carried. This is not to boast, not to tempt, but to guard you. Do not reveal until you must. Silence is not weakness, it is armor." I kept that letter folded between pages of my Bible. I never spoke of it, not even to Michael, though there were times I almost did. When he came home from high school, exhausted, or when he begged for money to fix his car, the urge to confess nearly broke through. But my mother's words pulled me back each time. Wait, one day you will know why. Now, years later, standing in my kitchen after Samantha's visit, I finally understood. The inheritance was never meant to make me proud. It was meant to keep me safe. I swept the crumbs from the counter, steadied my breath, and touched the brass key again. My life had been built on routines of thrift and caution. That day, those habits became the shield that would keep me standing when even my son began to waver. Michael's wedding had been a grand affair. The church stood gleaming in downtown Tucson, its stone walls washed in white light, lilies in every corner, and music polished enough to sound like glass. I arrived in my navy dress, one I had worn only once before at a retirement banquet. I told myself I would not draw attention. I would sit quietly and let the day belong to my son and his bride. An usher guided me through the reception hall, checked a clipboard, and stopped at a round table near the back. "Table 17, he said, pointing to a place card tucked beside a towering vase of roses. I took my seat and quickly realized the flowers rose like a wall, blocking my view of the dance floor. If I leaned left, I caught a glimpse of the aisle. If I leaned right, I saw only the edge of the cake. Between those angles, I was hidden. Across the room, Samantha's parents were seated near the cameras, their faces glowing in every frame. Samantha's mother floated from guest to guest like a practiced hostess, accepting praise for flowers and music, as if she had arranged it all herself. When she hugged Michael, she pressed her cheek against his and surveyed the room as though she were a queen, charting her kingdom. I understood my placement. I was not meant to be seen. When the vows began, I caught only fragments through the curtain of petals. For better, for worse, for as long as we both shall live. I whispered the words with them, feeling the weight of promises I had carried alone for decades. People think vows are fireworks. I knew they were long drives after bad news, patched shoes, and years of saying no when the world said yes. The toasts followed dinner. Samantha's father spoke at length about his daughter's resilience, her career, her brilliance. Applause burst, like applause always does when money speaks loudly. When it was my turn, I kept my toast short. I spoke of Michael's first toolbox the day he learned to hold the level straight. My words floated over the roses, but landed nowhere. I lifted my glass and sat before anyone could wonder what I meant. All evening I clapped into the greenery, my smile framed for photographs no one would print. I chose dignity over protest, silence over spectacle. But that night I knew something sharp. If I had revealed the truth about my inheritance, then it would have already been gone by the time Samantha brought her lawyer to my kitchen. 3 days after the wedding, I heard the doorbell again. The kettle had just begun to hum on the stove when I opened the door to find Samantha and the same lawyer waiting. She wore a cream coat, her smile rehearsed, and he carried that briefcase as if it were a badge. They stepped into my kitchen without hesitation. The folder returned to the table, its edges aligned too neatly, as if order could disguise intent. The lawyer spoke of safeguards, of best practices for seniors who live alone, of signatures that would prevent confusion. Samantha repeated the word worried 3 times, as though repetition could make it true. "Michael is worried," she said. "We only want peace of mind." Her hand rested on the folder like a lock waiting for a key. I listened. I poured tea. I stirred my spoon once and let silence sit heavy across the table. Then I said what neither of them expected. "Before I sign anything, my attorney will review every line." Their expressions shifted like curtains in a draft. "Your attorney?" the man said, his pen hovering. "Yes," I answered. "His name is Robert Chambers. He lives 2 streets over. He has known me for 30 years. I will call him this afternoon." The lawyer cleared his throat, mumbled about urgency. Samantha added quickly that delay could be dangerous. "Emergencies happen. It is better to act today." I raised one finger and said calmly, "Do not rush me. I will not sign what I have not read twice." That night Michael came alone. He sat at the same table, spinning his key ring until the metal clicked like nervous applause. "Mom," he said, "Samantha thinks we should just get the paperwork done. It will make things smooth." "Smooth for whom?" I asked. He faltered, then said, "For all of us." I watched his hands. I remembered the boy who once clutched a toy car in that same grip. I asked if he truly believed I needed help, or if he feared his wife's anger. He looked at the floor, lips pressed thin, and gave no answer. My chest ached with a sorrow deeper than words. Still, I held the silence until he shifted in his chair. "You know, I only want peace," he whispered. "Peace," I told him, "is priceless. But if it costs your mother's freedom, it is not peace at all." The next morning I called Robert Chambers. His voice was steady, carrying the patience of a man who had spent a lifetime reading fine print. "Bring whatever your mother left you," he said. We will see what shape it is in. I climbed the attic ladder and pulled down the cedar chest. The wood still smelled of lavender and dust. Inside, wrapped in a quilt, lay the blue folder my mother had left. My hands trembled as I carried it to the kitchen. When Robert arrived, he set his briefcase beside the folder and opened it with the reverence of a surgeon. He flipped through each document, nodding slowly. "Linda, this is no ordinary inheritance," he said. "These are fortress walls." He explained what I had never dared to believe. The trust was irrevocable. No change could be made without a declaration of incapacity signed by 2 licensed physicians. My name was fixed as sole trustee. Beneficiaries were clearly named. Any attempt to contest would trigger a no-contest clause, strong enough to strip challengers of every claim. Robert's pen moved across his pad. "We will add layers," he said. "Credit freeze, fraud alerts, voice passwords at the bank. All changes must be in person with 2 employees present." He suggested a door card for the porch. I never signed documents presented without counsel. That way, anyone who came with a folder would meet the warning before they met my eyes. As he wrote, I told him about Samantha's urgency, the lawyer's talk of today, and Michael's silence. Robert listened, then leaned back. "Desperation wears many masks," he said. "Do not mistake it for care." He tapped the folder again. "Your mother did well, but someone has been looking at county records. I saw inquiries last month. Likely Samantha's lawyer. They are fishing for property in your name." His eyes hardened. "This means they are not guessing. They are digging." The words chilled me. It meant my secret was no longer invisible. I folded my hands to keep them steady. Robert slid a clean binder across the table. "Label it defense plan," he said. "Place copies of every document inside. If they push again, you will not stand with only silence. You will stand with law." I placed the brass key on top of the binder and felt something shift inside me. For the first time since Samantha appeared at my door, I no longer felt cornered. I felt armed. 2 days later, the inevitable knock came. I opened the door to see Samantha standing straight as a blade, Michael at her side, and the lawyer once again carrying his polished briefcase. They stepped into my kitchen with the same confidence as before, but this time I was ready. We sat at the table. The folder landed between us with a soft thud. The lawyer began his well-practiced speech about safety, efficiency, and clarity. Samantha added sweet words about love and responsibility. Her tone sounded rehearsed. Her smile stretched thin. I let them finish. Then I stood, walked to the hutch, and brought out the new binder Robert had prepared. I set it down carefully, the labeled defense plan gleaming in plain black ink. Their eyes followed it like moths to a flame. I read aloud from the card Robert had drafted. I never sign documents without counsel. All communication goes through my attorney. Drafts must be provided 48 hours in advance. That is my boundary. The lawyer blinked, caught off guard. Samantha leaned forward, her voice tightening. "We are only trying to protect you," she said. "Think of Michael. He could lose his job if finances collapse. We just want peace." I met her eyes. "Why the hurry then? Why press for today? If this were truly about love, there would be no clock ticking." Michael's shoulders sagged. His hands twisted the keys in his lap. Finally, he whispered, "Her family is drowning. Debts from the wedding, loans, bills." Samantha shot him a glare sharp enough to cut. But the truth had already landed on the table. My heart broke at the sound of my son's confession, but I kept my voice steady. "Desperation is not care. It is hunger wearing borrowed clothes." Samantha snapped then, accusing me of selfishness, of hoarding, of not trusting my own son. She said, "A mother who loved would never hesitate." Her words struck like darts, but I let them fall. Silence can bruise louder than argument. When she finally stopped, I folded my hands. "Peace," I said softly, "is not built on obedience. It is built on respect. If you wish to sit at this table again, come with that." The lawyer closed his briefcase. Without another word, Michael kept his eyes low. Samantha rose stiffly, her coat brushing the chair. As they walked out, I felt the binder solid under my palm. I was no longer a target. I was a wall. 2 afternoons later, I stopped by the pharmacy for aspirin and stamps. The sun beat down hard on the parking lot and the air smelled faintly of asphalt. As I stepped from my car, I caught sight of Samantha's white SUV parked near the curb. The windows were down, and inside sat Samantha and her mother, their voices carrying clearly across the warm air. I froze. I had no wish to spy, yet their words drifted to me as if meant to be heard. "We cannot keep floating balances," her mother said sharply. "The planner wants another payment and the florist claims the card bounced. Jenna's husband is asking about the money we borrowed." Samantha's voice cracked. "It is temporary. Andrew swore if Diane signs, Michael can consolidate everything. We can roll the cards, pay the venue, pay the lawyer. I just need her to stop being so difficult." Difficult. The word landed like a stone in my chest. Her mother clicked her tongue. Difficult is what people call women who know how to say no. "Samantha, you are steering this. Steer well." Samantha let out a breath that sounded more like a sob. "I never wanted to beg an old woman. I am not a thief. I just need a door to open." I stepped back behind the newspaper rack. My hands tightened on the envelope of stamps. This was no misunderstanding. They had plotted to corner me from the start, their polished smiles hiding debt stacked higher than their wedding flowers. When they drove away, I entered the pharmacy and made my purchase. The clerk asked paper or plastic, and I answered without thinking. "Neither. Just let me carry it." That Sunday, I sat in the fellowship hall at church with Clara and 3 other women my age. They had heard whispers of what I was facing. Ruth leaned close and said, "Paper is how quiet women speak in loud rooms." Bernice nodded. "Men bring hammers, but we bring forms." Their words struck deep. For the first time, I felt less alone, as if my silence had joined a chorus instead of echoing through empty walls. I folded my receipt from the pharmacy, placed it inside my Bible next to my mother's letter, and whispered a prayer, not of fear but of clarity. I now knew the shape of the storm. Michael returned one evening without Samantha. The desert light slanted across the porch, painting long shadows on the steps. He stood with his jacket too thin for the wind, keys clenched in his fist like a boy caught in a lie inside the kettle sang. We sat at the kitchen table, the binder between us like a silent judge. He rubbed his brow, eyes tired. "Mom," he said, "Samantha is furious. She thinks you embarrassed us. She says you do not trust family. She says I have to protect our future." I folded my hands. "I am protecting mine." I said, "And by doing so, I am protecting yours." He shook his head. "She will not let it go unless you sign something. Anything." "I will not," I answered. He stared at the spoon between us. "Why does this feel like war?" Because I said gently, "Peace built on surrender is not peace at all. You worry about losing face. I worry about losing myself. Losing face can be repaired. Losing myself cannot." His eyes filled with fear, not anger. "She says I am weak if I cannot make this happen. You are not weak for refusing harm." I told him weakness is knowing a thing is wrong and doing it anyway. He swallowed hard. What should I tell her? Tell her the boundary is firm. Tell her I have counsel. Tell her love without respect is control by another name. For the first time in weeks, he looked directly into my eyes. A thin line of shame trembled across his face, but beneath it flickered something else. Relief. I slid an index card across the table. On it were 3 sentences written in clear, steady ink. "I love you. I will not sign. I will always answer when you call me with respect." He read them twice, lips pressed together. Then he slipped the card into his pocket. His shoulders straightened. The keys in his hand no longer rattled. After he left, I carried the binder to the safe, turned the brass key, and listened to the click. Outside, the roses bent in the evening breeze. I watered them slowly, close to the roots. No splash on the leaves. Just as my mother once taught me, the greatest victories, I realized, are not loud. They do not come with applause or headlines. They come with steady hands and clear words. They come when you hold your line and refuse to trade dignity for false peace. That night I whispered to the desert air, "Silence is not weakness. It is power chosen. My son will learn that one day. Until then, the gate stays closed, but my heart remains open."